Good morning. Thanks for joining us. This is Up North News Radio for this Wednesday, June 28th, 2023. I'm Pat Kreitlow. Nice to have you along here. Those of you watching on social media, might be the Up North News Facebook page or the Facebook page for Civic Media, Bull Falls Radio, maybe on the Up North News YouTube page or the Twitter sites for some of our places like Civic Media and who else on Twitter? Up North News, yeah. So wherever you are, welcome. The only people not hearing this are the people on the radio, and we're a radio show. And we get started on the radio station at 6:06. So if you're not watching us live, you can fast forward this video ahead 5 minutes, and you'll see the start of a show that includes our weekly climate check with Melissa Baldoff, including Seth Hoffmeister from Wisconsin Conservation Voters. And then Doug Mell, former editor of the Eau Claire Leader Telegram, longtime communications person with UW Stout. He had an op-ed in the Cap Times this week about how Robin Vos and other Republicans have it backwards when they're talking about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and how it's the UW system trying to force DEI on students. It's the other way around. It's students who want more opportunities. They want more diversity. So he's going to talk a bit about that. We will visit with Melissa Kay from Locally Grown Radio in Wisconsin Rapids and Todd Alba from the conveniently named Todd Alba Show. All that and more coming up starting at 6:06. We'll see you then. All right. So again, this is just for the folks on the secret show, but we just learned that we're going to have 4 Brewers tickets to give away for Monday, July 3rd, which will be a holiday for a lot of folks. And rather than 2 at a time on Thursday and Friday, I've made the executive decision that we're going to give away 4 tickets to somebody on Friday for Monday's game, or Monday's Brewer game, right after we figure out how we're going to do that. So if you've got ideas for trivia questions or other things, you can let us know. How's it down there in terms of being either smoky or humid or all of the above?
Yeah, it's pretty bad, all of the above.
Yeah. We decided last night to, just keep everything closed up and keep the air conditioner running. It's not nearly as bad as down there, but still, it's not fun. I was just looking at things and realizing I haven't really talked about the TuneIn app for a while, and I see it is still working. It's got the stations on there. There hasn't been any talk down there, like to talk about it more or less or anything like that.
Tune in, I don't know, but the app in general, definitely.
Yes. Yep. That's what, as I was making my notes about talking about the app today, that's what made me think of it. I was like, I haven't used that for a while. And the reason why is, again, for the private show, secret show listener audience only, if you don't get it's kind of like YouTube. It's just become nothing but ads. It's almost unusable. I mean, YouTube, I have to stick with it. I'm not paying for YouTube Premium, so I'll have to put up with all the commercials as I look for music clips. But with TuneIn, I'm like, I got other options. So,
Oh, by the way, I was looking for the audio for that Flaming Lips concert.
Oh, not necessarily for the concert, just any Flaming Lips. I'm sorry,
Oh,
I should have made that clear. My
I
apologies.
grabbed one then.
Yeah, that's okay. I have to tell you, in the category of you can only keep so many plates spinning at a time, there was a very short time there earlier this year when I was trying to do a daily newsletter about the show at the same time.
Right, I remember that.
I just had to let it go. This week on Monday, I opened up a window to start making notes for a newsletter. It's Wednesday and I still haven't like even if it's right there in front of you, like, no, there's too much to do. All right, here we go.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Thank you, Don Rue. Good morning. Hey there, Wisconsin. Welcome to the state of Wisconsin Sense from the shores of Lake Wissota, where it's another beautiful but hazy day up north on this Wednesday, June 28th. It is 68 degrees up here on the lake. For folks listening in the Chippewa Valley on 93.5 The Tap. Let's look at some other temperatures around Wisconsin at 6 o'clock in the morning on this Wednesday. Folks listening on the Shaw and Waukesha, they are at one of the cool parts of the state right now, 52 degrees. Madison, 63. Wisconsin Rapids, 57. Folks listening on the Buzz of the North in Hayward, it's 63 degrees there, and 67 for folks in Amory listening on Lake Air. Here's what's on tap this morning. The smoke-filled skies, the dry fields, the massive heat domes, the strong storms, they all indicate the need to stop making conditions worse for a climate that's already stressed. Fortunately, some new programs are helping cities like Green Bay, as well as farmers across Wisconsin who want to make changes away from fossil fuels. And we will talk to Melissa Baldauf for our weekly climate check. We'll be joined by Seth Hoffmeister from Wisconsin Conservation Voters. Then in our second hour, we'll talk to Doug Mell. From serving as editor of the Eau Claire Leader Telegram to spending 15 years serving UW Stout, Doug Mell knows a thing or two about when is it politics and when are you in full spin mode. And he says Assembly Speaker Robin Vos has it backwards when Vos claims the UW system is trying to force diversity, equity, and inclusion programs onto students. And so we'll discuss the harm of passing a state budget that actually cuts the university system at a time of surpluses just because of petty and some would argue race-based divisions. Doug Mell is my guest. It's 7 o'clock. He has an op-ed in the Cap Times talking all about this as well. Later this hour, we will visit with Melissa Kay from Locally Grown Radio in Wisconsin Rapids, and then we'll wrap up the show with Todd Alba from that conveniently named show with his name on it, all ahead here on Up North News Radio, where our studio line is 844-967-2789, and where we got off on a nice little tangent yesterday, starting with Captain Kangaroo, and then getting into other local kids shows from when we were growing up. So just a reminder that there aren't a lot of guardrails on the show. If we want to get into some other subject matter, you can be the one to help change that subject by calling 844-967-2789 or sending us a note, radio@upnorthnewswi.com. Aaron Zommers is in Madison as well. And I know, man, the photos and the video from the Milwaukee area, especially yesterday, were just, I mean, it was science fiction-y to see just how smoky it was. How are things looking out there in the Madison area?
Well, the air quality index today, according to my friend Noah, is 215 this morning.
215.
And
That's not good. That's not good, by the way, folks.
Yesterday, my friend Avery, who lives downtown Milwaukee, said it was 232 there at about 5 p.m.
I mean, for at times yesterday, it qualified as the worst air quality in the world. That's how bad this smoke from the Canadian wildfires has been. We actually have kept the house buttoned up here today up north. It's not nearly as bad as down there, but still, I mean, it's it just smells and tastes just really not healthy out there.
Yep, it's like driving in mist, except it's just not quite right.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. Oh, now here's the thing: the fires. People go, no. I mean, we've had fires in Canada before, right? Well, through social media, I got turned on to the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center all across Canada. If you look at this map, it's just flames coast to coast across Canada. There are 490 fires burning right now. 255 of them are still burning out of control, creating smoke and the atmospheric conditions that are just right to pump it down here. There was a story about how Flight for Life was unable to respond to a traffic crash in the Milwaukee area because the FAA requires 2 miles visibility for Flight for Life, and visibility was down to 3/4 of a mile because of the smoke yesterday. There were air alerts in Minnesota for a record 23rd time. Michigan had one out for the entire state. And, right now we're rather helpless to do anything about it until it drifts away and take care of ourselves and stay indoors and things like that. And we will talk more about this at 6:30 with Melissa Baldoff and Seth Hoffmeister as well. There's so many small headlines that we were going to talk about in the news today, but Aaron, I'd argue none are as important as this. Wheel of Fortune is not going to go away. It will have a new host. I'm sure you're excited about that.
I have a deeply. I'm not even gonna try and fake it. I've watched probably 3 episodes of Wheel of Fortune ever.
Well, of course, you're far too young for something like that. But it's going to be around because when you're old, it's going to be there, and you're going to find yourself watching it more and more. Hasn't happened to me yet, and I got a birthday Monday, but so it might happen next year. But thankfully, with Pat Sajak exiting the stage next year, Ryan Seacrest has a new gig, which I have to say that actually sounds really natural. That sounds like the kind of thing Ryan Seacrest would move into in his later years.
Well, I'm gonna have to tell our colleague Todd Michaels you said that he hates Ryan Seacrest so much.
To me, it's like, look, somebody's got to play that particular role in life, and that's what Ryan Seacrest does. So, I mean, he's led a very charmed life in some ways. So good for him. It'll be Ryan Seacrest hosting Wheel of Fortune. Many more headlines to talk about in this segment before we do our climate check at the bottom of the hour. Brewers update too. So stick around. You're up north.
Also, as far as getting it backwards with DEI, yeah, as a recent college student, that's absolutely the case. Like the university would announce their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and then the students, it'd basically be like all but a riot where they'd be like, "This is what you call DEI? Are you kidding me? That's it."
Yep. Yeah. Uh, well, I'm reading John Kinville's book about how there used to be Ku Klux Klan chapters, across Wisconsin, and it reads like such a normal day, like, oh, it's just a normal meeting for us here, as long as we don't have any blacks or Jews, living in the area, or Catholics. There was a lot of anti-Catholic sentiment too, and to them it's like la la la, life is good. Hell of a way to go through life.
It always comes back to that meme of the dog sitting in his house that's on fire, and he's just
Yep,
like, "This is fine."
this is fun.
When I'm taking a Greyhound on the Hudson River line, I'm in a New York state of mind.
I just figured since the Brewers were in New York playing the Mets for most of this week, New York State of Mind would work for here. And you're going to hear Empire State of Mind in our next hour as we talk about the Brewers, who have now split the first two games with the Mets. They lost to the Mets 7-2 last night, though you have to admit the Mets were a little bit more motivated. Their team owner abruptly announced that he's giving a State of the Club address today because the Mets have had a rotten year, winning last night for only the third time in their last 10 games. And going back a couple of weeks, they are 6-16. And so there was a little bit of motivation to make some kind of an impression because the trade deadline isn't that far away for a team with an extremely high payroll and is underperforming. Milwaukee's starting pitcher Julio Teheran retired the first 9 batters on just 34 pitches. But then Brandon Nimmo opened the fourth with a long bomber, the first of 4 homers by the Mets, 2 of them by Nimmo. The gates were open. Teheran gave up 7 runs total in 5 2/3 innings. That 7 runs is as many as he'd allowed in his first 6 starts with the Brewers, spanning 35 innings since he joined the club a month ago. The Brewers bats, they simply went quiet again. The only thing that prevented a shutout was Brian Anderson's 2-run single in the 8th. So 2 games down, 2 more to go against the Mets, 6 o'clock tonight and tomorrow night before heading to Pittsburgh for the weekend. Catch the Brewers on News from the Center and Richland Center, 107.7 FM, 1450 AM. Or if you're in the Fox Valley over the weekend, catch the Brewers on Oshkosh Air Support, 98.3 and 1100 AM. We've been talking a few times about the newly retooled Civic Media app, and Aaron and I can vouch for it. We've downloaded it, we're using it, works out great. As we noted yesterday, you can text the show, and we'll see the text messages. You can call the show directly from the app. We haven't talked much about TuneIn though, have we? Because again, we've got our own app now, right?
Yeah, especially now that the app is updated, it is legitimately very nice. Like before, the app was serviceable.
Mm-hmm.
And I used it a lot, but now I use it more because it works way faster.
Mm-hmm.
It just has more features like the texting and calling, setting your home station so that it automatically pulls up to that. Just little things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it you can set, in my case, I set it at 93.5 the tap for a home station. I was listening to yesterday's Todd Alba show, which plays right before we come on. So I say all that to say, nothing against TuneIn. If you are, different people like different apps. Some people have TuneIn. Some people like to listen to things through SoundCloud or SiriusXM or whatever the case may be. And I checked early this morning. I'm like, yep, TuneIn. All the Civic Media stations are there. So if you are a TuneIn subscriber, especially if you are a premium subscriber, if you're not, and I'm not, there's a lot of ads. I mean, it's like YouTube. I am so glad the radio station pays for a premium account on YouTube for you. I can't imagine you finding all of our music clips if you had to sit through commercials every time.
Oh man, if we didn't have like Spotify or something, but even then using YouTube is better because we can get weird TV show clips or whatever.
What we need is for everybody who wants to advertise to just do it here. Just do it on your local Civic Media station. If we had commercials just right here, we'd be doing great. And, you wouldn't be bugged in other places quite so much. We want you to listen to the ads here. We just want to protect you, everywhere else. And don't forget, the Civic Media website is where you can see all the various show schedules for each of the stations, find out just how much Civic Media is growing all around Wisconsin. Also, from an Up North News standpoint, we have received so many responses, Aaron, to another one of those one-word posts, fill in the blank posts. There's one that we put up the other day, and we're up to some 200 comments now. And it simply says, my favorite outdoor music venue in Wisconsin is blank. What comes off the top of your head first? My favorite outdoor music venue in Wisconsin is.
I mean, I don't know a lot of them really, besides random spots in Manitowoc or yeah, that's pretty much it. Summerfest, I guess, is outside.
Summerfest gets a lot of responses. So this post really sticks out for 2 reasons over at the Up North News Facebook page. One is the sheer number of outdoor music venues that people thought to cite. The first few were about Big Top Chautauqua up in the Ashland Bayfield area. Then there was local things like Tuesday Night Blues in Eau Claire's Owen Park. There's the Wing Haven Pizza Farm. There's Alpine Valley. A lot of those. Bree Stevens Field in Madison gets mentioned. A lot of Summerfest. Mile of Music in Appleton. I know you're
Oh,
familiar with
yeah.
that.
I can't
Rockfest.
believe I didn't think of that.
Yeah, Rockfest in Cadott. All outdoor music in Door County, according to Maxine here. Brenda says New Glarus has many great music venues. Let's see. I want to find there's a couple of other here. Fred puts down Ashley for the Arts in Arcadia. So there's two things about this. Oh, look at this one. Potter Shed and Shell Lake. Thanks for noticing, Don. High Noon Saloon. Two things about this. One, the sheer number of different options. You would learn so much just from this one post. But the other noteworthy thing about this, and I don't want to jinx it, but I scrolled through every response last night. So unless something's changed, out of these something like 200 responses or whatever it is, not one troll political, jerk saying, "Oh, what kind of a, libtard thing is that?" Everybody just answered the question. It's a social media miracle.
Wow. I mean, the comments are
sometimes
sometimes
usually
very
toxic, when
yeah.
you put something up. Even the most innocent thing, somebody will get in there and go, "Oh, well, it's Biden's fault or it's Trump's fault." It's like, no, just leave. Some things don't need a political response, like your favorite outdoor music venue. And so far on this one, and I swear to God, if one of you listening out there says, "Oh, I'm going to be funny and troll this," now I'm going to call you out publicly. Don't do it. Put down your favorite outdoor music venue. So congratulations, everybody. That one really worked out well. Now, unfortunately for outdoor music venues, we have some bad news to report. Remember the other day, Aaron, I talked about maybe wanting to go see Jimmy Buffett when he comes to Summerfest, but I guess he's not coming to Summerfest now. So that's
Oh.
yeah, and it's not the smoke and the haze thing like it was for Concerts on the Square. Recall on Tuesday, Christina Laurie and I talked about Concerts on the Square was supposed to start this week, but they actually postponed tonight's event till at least Thursday because of the poor air quality. So that part is really unfortunate. But apparently, Jimmy Buffett has had to cancel his planned appearance for Summerfest. No reason given. Summerfest said it was simply for reasons out of our control. So what I'm going to say next is I'm going to grant you is speculative, but I am going to note that last month, Jimmy Buffett had to postpone a show in Charleston. And the note that he posted about it was rather personal and rather health related. He said, and again, this is last month, "Hello, my faithful fans in Charleston and beyond. Here's a few words about Mark Twain about life changing challenges. Mark Twain said, make life interesting. However, overcoming them is what makes life meaningful. I had a sudden change of plans this week and wound up back in the hospital to address some issues that needed immediate attention. Growing old is for sissies. I promise you. I also will promise you that when I am well enough to perform, that is what I will be doing. Y'all make my life more meaningful and fulfilled, etc., etc." And of course, he ends it with "not yet," which anybody who knows his song One Particular Harbor, he really stresses that in the line about growing old and fading away. So we don't know exactly why Jimmy Buffett postponed the Summerfest show, but if it is for health reasons, obviously we wish him all the best and hope that he makes a full recovery there, because even at his tender age of, I want to say 75, I think, still puts on a very nice show. So that would be a nice development. Let's see. What have we got for comments here? Oh, Roger, we haven't heard from Roger for a while. Puts on Facebook, and so we'll show it up on the screen here. This weekend, Friday night through Sunday night, is Riverfront Rendezvous in Stevens Point. Great. Thank you, Roger, for mentioning that. Appreciate it. And if anybody else wants to add something to the comment section on the Up North News Facebook page, where you can see this live, feel free to do so. And if we see something there that we like, we will put that up. There is video of an American tourist I can't even believe I'm saying this, Aaron. There's video of an American tourist carving his name and or his girlfriend's name in the Colosseum in Rome
in,
and
in the Coliseum.
into the Colosseum wall. And there are people, calling him names that we can't say on the radio. And he just gives this goofy smile to the camera. It's like, look how cool I am, carving into the Coliseum. So apparently I don't know if there's a manhunt. Well, I don't know if they found him. I know there was a manhunt to actually find this doofus. The message said his name must be Ivan plus Haley 23. And this comes at a time when people in Rome are already complaining about hordes of tourists flooding the Eternal City in record numbers this season. So I mean, I hope they find this guy.
I know if I was Haley, I'd be like, do I want this individual potentially being the father to my children?
No,
I don't think so.
no, you really don't. So yeah, I hope they find him. I hope they throw the book at him. All right, now to just a quick bit of serious news here about the Wisconsin Elections Commission. Again, it's not the world's biggest story yet, but there were concerns that the Wisconsin Elections Commission would be plunged into uncertainty if Megan Wolf, the current administrator, whose term expires on June 30th, what if she were to be, not endorsed by the Wisconsin Elections Commission and reappointed? Well, as you know, because of the whole thing with Fred Pren, the guy that overstayed his welcome on the DNR board, and conservatives on the state Supreme Court said, oh, well, if your term expires and there's no replacement, well, there can't be a replacement on the Wisconsin Elections Commission if there's no vacancy. And so the three Democrats on the Wisconsin Elections Commission said, there's no vacancy. We don't have to reappoint Megan Wolf. We're just leaving her in place. The Republicans wanted to have a vote on it to give the Republican state Senate a reason to maybe appoint somebody else. The Democrats simply abstained and the motion died. Here's how it was described by two of the members. You're going to hear from Ann Jacobs and Mark Thompson.
I agree with Commissioner Thompson that we don't have jurisdiction in this case. There is no vacancy. The law specifically says if a vacancy occurs. I don't think we can ignore that language. I don't think it's incumbent on us to try to make it into something it is not. I'm abstaining because we don't have jurisdiction to do this.
I don't think we should even play this game. Okay, when the law says we don't have a vacancy and we don't have the power to do it. There has to be a vacancy before we can ask for it. Because right now she is the administrator, and I've heard virtually unanimous consent that Megan Wolf is and should remain at the helm,
because she's doing the best job. She's being completely nonpartisan, completely fact-based about it. And so while there are Republicans in the Senate who I'm sure are going to try some kind of end run around this, fact of the matter is now she can stay in that office past the expiration of her term, and there's not a damn thing they should be able to do about it. All right, Melissa Baldoff and Seth Hoffmeister next with our weekly climate check. You're up north. All right, so I know I really cut it close. So we may or may not have time for me for 5 seconds afterwards to say you're up north. If we have to go right to break, that's fine too.
Okay.
But I forgot to make a slide for them, so I'm going to be working on that really quick here. Back now on this Wednesday morning, it's time for our climate check segment we do with Melissa Baldoff every week. And there are most decidedly things to talk about that are climate related. Don't believe me? Look out your window where, it's been a hazy summer so far. Melissa, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I'm coming to you from what a push alert on my phone told me is the second worst place in the world for air quality right now, Milwaukee, which is just awful.
In the world.
Yeah,
In the world.
yep. It is really bad out. I had to wear like an N95 mask to go walk the dog, so it's pretty bad out.
And frankly, that's again, not everybody had N95s because of the pandemic, but it sure is something that's pretty necessary right now with air quality this bad. And it's going to hang around in one degree or another for a while. And no doubt we've got some climate related things to talk about that, along with the potential for a drought as well. And that's where we're going to put a lot of our focus on drought and on climate. And you've brought along a friend of ours from Wisconsin Conservation Voters.
Yes, we did. So we're very happy to have Seth Hoffmeister joining us this morning to talk a little bit, about as much as we're seeing those tangible, really negative impacts happening. The air quality. We're going to talk about the drought conditions that are so bad for our farmers and so many others. But there are some good things happening when it comes to the climate, and one of the good things that's happening is happening in Green Bay. And I would love if Seth could talk to us a little bit about some of the good things happening.
That sounds great. Seth, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Pat. Good morning, Melissa. And thanks for having me on the show this morning.
You bet. So, tell us more about what is being planned in Green Bay in terms of energy and getting to as close as possible to 100% clean energy. What does that mean? And how are you helping folks there get to that point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here in Green Bay, just like many parts of Wisconsin, I'm looking out my window right now, and I can barely see, the buildings a quarter mile away that are really quite visible. I mean, we're already seeing the impacts of climate change, and we have for many years. But several years ago, community activists, local elected officials, and in Green Bay, witnessing the extreme weather, the flooding on the East River and on the Bay and on the Fox, decided that and realized that we didn't have to wait around for the state government or for the federal government to act on climate, and that we could set goals and start planning. A few years of doing this work, and Green Bay has a full-time climate resilience coordinator working on flood resilience and clean energy planning. We were granted the city in partnership with the city transit and the city water utility, we're given money from the state of Wisconsin to actually put those goals into action and map out how we can hit 100% clean energy by 2050 as a community. And on a day like today, it seems more and more relevant and pertinent that we get to work on this. And even though it's hard with the drought conditions and with just the inability to breathe and the smell that I'm smelling through my closed apartment windows here of the wildfires coming in from Ontario, the work that's happening in places like Green Bay and other local places, and the support that we're getting from a federal government who now recognizes the existential threat of climate change and is putting action and resources behind that, makes me a little bit hopeful on an otherwise dreary day.
Mm-hmm. And Melissa, you've been up to Green Bay to talk about this as well. What things do you see them talking about and looking to put into action that give you reasons for optimism?
Yeah, I seeing a lot there. And I think, like Seth said, just knowing that, there's that partnership between federal, state, and local resources is great for people to know and to see that the community is really engaged in the process. But what I've heard them talking about is, taking efforts to make energy costs more affordable for homeowners and for businesses. So giving some assistance to people to make those energy costs a little bit easier to bear. So that could be helping people invest in solar, assistance with energy bills. Also, I've heard, conversations about electrifying fleet vehicles. That's going to be something that is, down the road could really be a cost savings. And we know it's going to be putting fewer, harmful emissions into the environment. Decarbonizing buildings, same thing. So, I've heard a lot of really great ideas, and I know they're still working on the plan and still gathering input from the community. But just knowing that there's such a thoughtful approach from the mayor, from the partners in the community, and also getting that support from the state, and from Governor Evers has really made it a point to help local communities take these steps in addition to taking action at the state level. So it's just nice to know that that this is in progress in Green Bay and other communities around the state too.
Seth, when you mentioned that, that this has been something that's been discussed for the past, 3 years or so, it reminds me, if you'll forgive the little tangent here, but when we were looking to start Up North News about 3.5 to 4 years ago, I actually used those early discussions in Green Bay in a whole lot of meetings to tell people what was going to be different about Up North News is that while you can cover the day to day, in the legislature and in politics, and, Summerfest is open and that's all nice, but what's the thing that's going to matter long term? And I pointed to those Green Bay discussions and said, we need to let more people know that there are leaders out there who are leading on things like climate and energy, making buildings more efficient, getting more city buses and school bus fleets, to be electric powered. And so I'm glad that you're here to right now really give us that update on how these things are happening. And I'm sure that was made a lot easier by the Inflation Reduction Act by the Biden administration. I'm sure there's just innumerable elements that you're looking at and saying, finally, after all these years, this, and this are going to help people in Green Bay and the rest of Wisconsin.
I love to hear that. And I'm so glad that our work in this neck of the woods helped tell that story and get Up North News going. We've taken a lot of inspiration from other communities as well, places like Eau Claire, and I know a lot of other local communities around the state saw what Green Bay was doing, and we're like, we can do it here too. We have a community organizer with Wisconsin Conservation Voters in Stevens Point, where I went to college at UWSP, Go Pointers, and they're starting to have some of those same conversations too. So it really is contagious. There's a snowball effect of local communities taking climate action. There are dozens of places that are doing all of that. And yeah, it's exactly like you said. You can come up with these plans and these goals, but without the resources and the backing of our federal government, we're limited in what we can do. And I think going into the end of this year, when the IRA and Biden Affordable Clean Energy Plan benefits start to hit states and start to hit local governments, we're going to really just see a new era of climate action in the United States. And I think some of the things that we're seeing out our windows today, some of the drought conditions, the extreme weather, the smoke, are hopefully going to help with the urgency to have this not be the one thing that we do and really just the first biggest historic investment in climate change. I hope every 2 years we have a federal government investing even more in climate solutions, because the benefits to our health, the benefits to our daily lives, the benefits to our economy are going to be innumerable if we continue to make this a priority.
Let's move outside the city limits then and talk about, the rural parts of Northeast Wisconsin and the rest of the state, because we know that, for example, the Inflation Reduction Act includes $20 billion to support climate smart agriculture practices, another $5 billion for forest health. Melissa, these and many other things are going to have a direct impact, not just for the climate, but a direct impact on the rural economies, that farmers and others in rural areas will see real tangible benefits for doing things that stop contributing to the changing climate.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. This is something that, is going to be coming up again very soon. So we've got this $20 billion allocated through the Inflation Reduction Act, but, that funding could be at risk in the next farm bill. So it's so important that we've got folks out there who are talking about this and advocating for, keeping this investment and to Seth's point, expanding on these investments year over year over year. Farmers are wanting to see these types of conservation programs, particularly the next generation of farmers who are very concerned about the climate crisis. And that is something that I know is very really hits close to home for so many folks in Wisconsin. They've got family farms that have been around for generations, and they want to make sure that their kids and their grandkids can continue to, farm on their lands. And those young folks, 80% of them say that they want to see engagement in conservation efforts, and they want to see expansion in that, and that is important to them. And that is, even higher among farmers of color who have been, impacted in even larger ways here. So, I think that's a really important piece of the conversation, is that these resources are important, and they are also something that we're hearing over and over again farmers want to see, and it will help them be able to, we can continue to rely on them for a safe and healthy food supply, and they can continue to earn a living.
Melissa, you raise a very important point that Congress is talking about. A farm bill happens every 4 years or so, has to pass. That so many programs are in critical need and funded by the farm bill, but that'll be more difficult with split control of Congress. And it's not just about spending and doing things. There's been a lot of Republican talk about, especially during the debt ceiling debate, about clawing back, pandemic aid that hasn't been spent yet. And so the Farm Bill could actually be a battleground for rolling back some of the parts of the Inflation Reduction Act rather than making those investments in rural economies.
It's just so important to keep this funding in there. We've got so many people who are experiencing these bad conditions, right? You've got farm workers bearing the brunt of working in extreme heat, unpredictable storms, these drought conditions. And, we've got to really keep the feet to the fire for our members of Congress to hold on to these investments. This is funding for regional conservation partnership programs, for a conservation stewardship program, to support agricultural conservation, technical assistance programs. These are efforts that can provide really direct support to farmers, to rural communities, to our producers and folks working in the agriculture industry. So we want to make sure that we're protecting those resources for them to continue to do the work, because, as we said, they're really bearing the brunt of these bad conditions, personally and physically working in these bad conditions, and with, their livelihoods of, farmers directly, and the rural economy as a whole, who depends on our farmers being successful.
And just at a household level, whether you're in the city or the country, the rebates that are out there for, heat pumps, for, switching out appliances, these are all things, Seth, at the individual level that need to be, preserved at the federal level, and frankly could use more state investment as well. I have to imagine that when you're talking about things like rebates, that generates even more enthusiasm from people who they may not be as deeply concerned about climate environmental issues, but the rebates help motivate them.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's just a kitchen table pocketbook issue that's going to resonate with so many folks across the state and across the country. We're really just now starting to dig into all of the benefits that consumers are going to be able to have. Heat pumps, solar panels, just so many different benefits that we're just starting to scratch the surface on. And we're really excited to tell that story too, and to let folks know how they can save money on their energy costs. I know in the last couple of years, looking at my WPS bill, the rising price of gas and electricity has been putting a little strain on the old pocketbook, and anything that we can do to keep those costs down, and also make our air cleaner to breathe, and support a growing sector of new jobs in our new 21st century economy is really a win-win.
There are just there's a lot of wins to be had, but sometimes they still have to be defended. So Seth Hoffmeister from Wisconsin Conservation Voters and Melissa Baldoff, thank you for shining a light on these issues related to rural Wisconsin, to Green Bay, to a climate that has to deal with drought and wildfires. There's a lot to work on, and I really appreciate your time and expertise on this.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Today's history lesson and music break with Melissa Kay is next. You're Up North. Melissa's back.
Hello, hello.
I'm so sorry again about last week.
Oh, don't worry about it.
Oh, and honestly, it hasn't been that much better this week. Every day has just, well, I shouldn't say every day was just Monday and Tuesday, but they both were just like, the phone wouldn't stop ringing, the emails wouldn't stop coming in. It's,
You're a busy man, Pat.
I don't mean to be, I really, but some days it just feels like, wow, everybody's returning messages at once.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that's better than no calls returned.
Oh, it's better than scrounging. I absolutely admit that. But boy, so big plans for the holiday weekend?
Yeah, actually, I'm trying to split between two different gatherings.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Yeah, I got to spend Friday night one place and Saturday night another place.
Mm-hmm. Are they far apart?
Yeah, Sparta and Tomahawk.
Yeah, they most definitely are far apart.
A little bit.
Little bit.
That's okay. Not gonna miss seeing my nieces and nephews horseback riding.
Exciting.
I used to watch my older daughter do that a lot when she was like, 11, 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Until that one time when the horse decided to do like a cartwheel, jumping over a fence.
Oh no.
She
okay?
Off. She was fine, but
Okay,
at
good.
that point we were both kind of like, maybe this has run its course.
These are different sports.
This is no longer riding lessons. This is now something more than that. Okay, here we go.
Up on the roof, up on the roof.
Would be the Drifters.
When this whole world starts getting me down and people are just too much for me to face. Up on the roof.
Melissa Kay is here from Locally Grown Radio,
Hello,
WFHR, Wisconsin Rapids. How are you?
Oh, pretty good.
Good. So we're hearing the Drifters. They had the number one song with Up on the Roof. Want to guess the year?
63.
Very close, 62. Yeah.
Hey.
So there we go. The number one song that year. Before we get to the other history stuff, speaking of the Drifters, of course they did, bless you, Aaron, over there sneezing and silently on video. So you've heard of Chat GPT, this AI thing that everybody's talking about now.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if I mentioned it on the radio yet. If I did, I apologize, but I thought that might be a good thing to use for this day in history segment. Instead of having to go through all these other websites, just have one site say, show me all of the celebrity birthdays and the number one songs for this date.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried it 2 different times now.
Yeah.
Came back completely wrong. Almost everything there was wrong. Had the wrong birthday, the wrong anniversary, whatever the case. I'm like, okay, I'm going through all these by hand. The Drifters made me think of it because I remember seeing someplace that the Drifters Under the Boardwalk was like the song that was popular on my birthday, which would be July 3rd, 1964.
Ooh.
But that was wrong, or Chat GPT is wrong because I just asked it and it said it hit number one in August of 1964. So I don't know what to make of all this AI. I think there's no substitute for doing your own homework.
Yeah, Chat GPT for the fail.
Yeah.
There's no substitute for doing your own homework yet.
Yet. On this day in 1926, Mercedes-Benz was formed by Gottlieb Daimler and Carl Benz. On this day in 1969, this is what started Pride Month. The Stonewall riots began in New York City, marking the start of the gay rights movement. This is the anniversary of the birth of American playwright and composer Richard Rodgers of Rodgers and Hammerstein. He passed away in 1979, but here's one example from Oklahoma.
Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling. Everything everything's going my way.
Oh, here's the deal. As I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the clip from Oklahoma, and I'm blanking out on the name of the actor, Gordon McRae, I think, and he's on this horse going across this beautiful field, singing this lovely song about what a lovely day. And I thought, how far have we fallen from that time to Yellowstone, where Kevin Costner and all these other people are like branding and torturing the bad guys, and it's so violent. And I'm just like, could we somehow get back to Gordon McRae on a horse in a cornfield? Because
Can we just pretend there's no violence?
well,
It's not
I
a
don't wanna
thing.
I don't. There can be. I just don't want it on my TV. You know,
Yeah,
I want to
right.
relax.
Let's live in an iconic fantasy world.
Mel Brooks. Do you know how old he turns today? Today is his birthday.
Ooh. Oh, no.
97.
I was gonna say it's got to be in his 90s.
Yeah, born this day in 1926. This is the birthday for Elon Musk. He would be 52 years old today, unless he's already managed to screw up his birthday the way he screwed up Twitter. Rob Dyrdek, you know him from Ridiculousness or from his time as a skateboarding champion. He would be 49 years old today. On this day in 1975, the number one song was by David Bowie. Again, one of those things you learn when you're doing the research. The backing vocals on this, John Lennon. Did not know that. On this day in 1997, I don't know if you remember this one, Melissa, the Holyfield-Tyson second fight, where Mike Tyson was disqualified in the third round for biting off a piece of Evander Holyfield's ear.
Really? Ew.
Oh, you've never seen that?
No,
Oh,
do I want to.
So disgusting.
Ugh.
Oh,
Yeah, it's brutal.
it is. I mean, now Mike Tyson, when he first came up, through the ranks, he was like, nobody could believe this guy. It was like all these first round knockouts. But at some point you had to say, he must really have some anger issues. And we later learned he has serious anger issues.
Yeah.
On this day in 2012, the Flaming Lips break the Guinness World Record for the most live shows performed in multiple cities within 24 hours. They did 8 different live concerts in 24 hours,
Whoa.
stretching from Memphis to New Orleans. The previous record was 7 shows in 24 hours by Jay-Z. And this is, I'm not familiar with the Flaming Lips. This is called It's Summertime, Aaron?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And I can't
Oh, good on them. But let's not forget to give credit to the roadies, because you can't do any live shows of any scale
Nope.
without a crew.
Oh
like
yeah, absolutely.
No kidding.
I know I've done a lot of like stage tech work
Mhm.
in local theater, and some of it for music when we had bands come into town, and it's a lot of stuff.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah. Oh yeah. So definitely give it up for the roadies on this one.
Oh, for sure.
One more note here on this day 4 years ago, singer, actress, American Idol runner-up Catherine McPhee, who at the time was 35, got married to super producer David Foster, who was then 69. They had met 13 years earlier when Foster mentored McPhee on American Idol. They started dating in 2017, and they now have a son who's 2 years old, and they appear to be very happy. Catherine McPhee and David Foster, who are now 40 and 73. So, good on them.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Glad it worked out.
Yes, it seems to have worked out just fine. Before I ask Melissa about locally grown radio, I can't forget to note that we just learned that we have acquired 4 tickets for the Brewers game next Monday. It's Monday, July 3rd, and it's against the Chicago Cubs. The Cubs will be in town starting Monday the 3rd. And rather than do 2 and 2, I'm going to give away all 4 at once, and I'm going to do it on Friday. So
Hey.
folks be listening Friday, because I'm taking Monday off for my birthday. I'm not going to the game. Kind of wish I was now. But we're going to give away 4 tickets on Friday. So Melissa,
Awesome.
what's new in Rapids World?
Oh, today we get to talk with Allison Dairyland, Taylor Schaefer during our 9 o'clock hour on the morning show on WFHR. So we're excited about that.
And where's she from? Do you know?
Actually, I think she's from Wisconsin Rapids.
I kind of thought she must be like a local girl there, because
Yeah.
I believe the previous one must have been from somewhere in the Chippewa Valley, because I know I've seen her mentioned a couple of times over the course of the past year.
Mm-hmm.
Which leads to this Allison Dairyland story. You can imagine our shock one day when our morning news anchor uh, Roxanne Westfall, wasn't on the morning show that day, and up comes a story in the morning show that she was the new Alice in Dairyland. She had applied and did everything for the job and won the job over the weekend, all without telling anybody at the TV station, because if she won, she wanted it to be a surprise, and it was a surprise. And Roxy made a great Alice in Dairyland. But can you imagine that shock of finding out your coworker is suddenly
Yeah.
Alice in Dairyland?
Poof. That's
I mean,
pretty awesome.
well, I mean, it can only happen to so many coworkers. It could happen to you. Now, if one of these mornings Aaron's not here and he's Alice in Dairyland, then I'm going to be really surprised. But
So will I.
and Aaron, more than anybody else, we submitted his name. Hey, Melissa, good to talk to you. Have a great show
Yeah,
this morning
You too. Thanks, guys.
over on locally grown radio WFHR. More on Up North News Radio coming up in just a bit after a news break here up north. All righty.
You know, I've contended that there should be an Alice in Dairyland and an Aaron
Al.
in Dairyland, but
And Aaron in Dairyland. I was going to say Al
Yeah.
in Dairyland, but Aaron in
Yeah.
Dairyland.
Aaron
Yeah.
and Dairyland. It
How
like
about Gary?
almost
How about
It
Gary in
works.
Dairyland?
that also
Larry-
works.
Larry in Dairyland, Mary in Dairyland. See, there's so many possibilities here. So,
Mhm.
all right. You go have fun, Melissa. Thanks for
All
playing with
right.
us.
Thanks, guys. Have a good
See ya.
day.
You too.
Bye.
All right. So should be seeing Doug Mell sometime in the break here.
Hello. Pat will be back in just a second. He is grabbing more coffee.
All right, already had some, huh? Ooh.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, well, look who snuck in here.
Mr. Kreitlow, how are you?
Oh, great. How are you?
I'm good.
All right. All right. Good deal. Get my volume situated here. There we go. Okay. There we go. Got to get all my little notes here. Where's that op-ed? I know it's here somewhere. I know I'm not setting any kind of a record for the most number of tabs open, but there's days I wonder I must be in the running, So what are you doing with your bad self these days besides roasting politicians?
Yeah, well, that and I still write a little bit. The Chamber of Commerce has a magazine that comes out twice a year, so I write for that. I do some public relations work for Dunn County.
Okay.
Yeah, other than that, I've been fishing and just,
Nice.
riding my bike and just trying to stay out of trouble, I guess.
Yeah, and trying to find our version of the browse about so you can sit in the front window there and just do an imaginary radio show like I'm doing here.
Yeah, the best part is though I can write columns like this and then I don't have to worry. That's not my problem. So how's the show going, Pat?
Oh God, so good. I'm loving this so much.
Good.
I'm just trying to get some graphics ready for you. There we go. Okay. Yeah, this is great. It's going to be even more interesting when technically the new studio for Chippewa Falls is ready, and then I'll still have this statewide show on from 6 to 8, and then from 8 to 9 we'll have a show just on the local station. And so I mean, look, I'm no Peter Murphy, I'm no John Murphy, but it's about time we had a nice newsy 8 to 9 o'clock hour again on Eau Claire Radio.
Right.
And once that's the case, I don't see why you're not on at least once a week if you can take a break from your fishing.
Yeah. Anytime you want to come on, anytime you want me on, Pat, I'm usually available. So
all right, I appreciate that. I'm a few days behind on Mr. Tony here, so I haven't heard much of nothing too much interesting.
Nothing much changes with him, It's like it's golf.
Yep.
It's always because this is about the time he'd start thinking about taking off. And
yes,
now he's just pissing and moaning because there's no sports. I mean, there's baseball, but other than that,
I know he can't wait for the red zone to come back. And
yeah, I know. It's like
it's very much a routine, and I tell you, I'm happy that he gets to do this on his terms. I'm glad he's happy, but I really do miss having a big group in the studio with Jeannie and Gary and everybody else.
I do too.
It's really when it was at its best.
I should have worn my Chatter T-shirt. Shoot.
Well, save that. There'll be another appearance.
All right.
And all the littles who see this will just love it. And for folks watching,
I actually stopped it. I got a picture of Tony Chatter.
Okay. Hey, are you on Wi-Fi or what? Because you're a little spotty at times. Are you?
I'm on Wi-Fi.
Can I'm just doing my Mr. Tony impression. Like, hold your phone steady.
Yeah, no, I'm on Wi-Fi. Is that
okay?
I mean,
we'll see how it goes, and we'll see if we have to adjust it, for in the future here. But we'll give it a go.
And I should have we have good internet in this house. That's the one nice thing is that's sort of how I survived pandemic because we had great internet here. But
oh yeah, yep. The other thing we can do, if it gets a little spotty, I might put something in the chat box that says, just hit the stop cam button down there and turn your camera off, and that'll improve the audio and the bandwidth. But in the meantime, we'll get this thing going in about 10 seconds here.
All righty.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Minnesota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
And welcome back to the second hour of Up North News Radio for this Wednesday, June 28th. I'm looking at my national day calendar here, and I'm finding that it's kind of lacking. It's National Paul Bunyan Day. It's National Insurance Awareness Day, and it's International Caps Lock Day. So apparently, if you like to scream in the chat section, that's okay. All right, so not every day can be a winner here, folks, but we will make up for it with a great guest and a great topic. First, I'll tell you that if you missed our last hour, catch the show anytime, including our climate check with Melissa Baldoff as a podcast. Go to civicmedia.us or Apple, Spotify, any place like that. Subscribe, download the show. We'd love to have you along. But if you're here live, the studio line is 844-967-2789. And I'm joined now by Doug Mell, who between serving as editor of the Eau Claire Leader-Telegram to spending 15 years serving at UW Stout, this is a guy who knows a thing or two about politics versus spin. And he has an editorial column in the Cap Times with the headline, Robin Voss's vendetta for the UW is based on a false premise. And we'll get into that. Doug Mell, good morning.
Good morning, Patrick.
Hey, Good to see you. Just a couple of old Chippewa Valley media hacks finally getting to just,
Yep,
bloviate
that's
on the
right.
radio. So that's pretty darn nice. But hey, after you spent time as a political reporter for the State Journal, many years at the Leader Telegram, you spent 15 years until fairly recently at UW Stout. So you've been inside the system. So when you see this Republican cut to the UW budget, a cut during a record surplus, but because it's a little hissy fit about diversity, equity, inclusion, you wrote this column saying, that the whole reason for the snit is based on a false premise. What's the false premise?
Well, the premise is this: Robin Voss and those who support him in the Republican caucus, both it seems like in the Assembly and in the state Senate, seem to think that it's the administration at these campuses that want DEI because they want to somehow indoctrinate all the students that come into the UW system into being a diverse, equitable, and inclusive person. That somehow they go through some sort of indoctrination. I think the term that Speaker Voss used was evangelize. And in my experience, it's actually the opposite. In my experience, through 15 years at UW Stout, it was actually the students, for the most part, and to some extent the faculty and staff, that actually came to the administration and said almost continually, Pat, we want you to do more in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Back then, it was, we had a lot of terms: force of excellence, affirmative action. Not so much affirmative action, but more diversity. Diversity was sort of how it was referred to, but it was literally over those 15 years, it was the students who came to the administration and said, we want you to do more, rather than the administration hiring all these positions to sort of brainwash, or whatever term you want to use, the students. It's actually the opposite of how Speaker Voss portrays it.
Yeah, well, Speaker Voss has a rather unique way. The thrice married speaker went in to invoke religion, saying recently at the Republican State Convention that DEI, quote, is the new religion of the left. They don't go to church on Sunday, but they have no problem using taxpayer dollars to evangelize on every college campus across the state. We have to stop, put our foot down, and not allow that to continue. And I'm not really sure if I don't know that there's a word in that quote that is fact-based whatsoever. It's certainly not anything about new religion, about not going to church, evangelizing. I'm not seeing any basis in fact in what he told the Republican convention.
Well, there isn't. Again, there's no basis in fact, because it's actually the opposite of what he said. Now, I will tell you that I worked for 4 chancellors at UW. Every in the goals of DEI, there's the question was, how do you make that happen on campus? I hope that Speaker Voss doesn't mean that we shouldn't have diverse campuses, that campuses need to be 90, 100%, majority white. I hope he doesn't want a campus that isn't based on equity, that everybody, no matter what your race is, no matter what your sexual orientation is, no matter what your creed is, are treated differently. I hope he doesn't want campuses that aren't inclusive, that don't include everybody. And frankly, you need efforts on campuses to make sure that each campus is as welcoming for people from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, from all races, as possible.
there's no
So
there's
it's
no
not based
sin.
on, it's not based on fact.
Right. There's no sin in that. So we will continue this conversation with Doug Mell. We're going to get a check on weather and sports coming up right after this break. You're up north. All right, Doug, let's hit the stop camera button and let's see if we can keep your audio, make your audio a little clear. Right now, you've got the Bob Ryan phone thing going.
I told you, we should have tested it, but
That's all right.
we
So,
should have tested it, but
all right. So we'll
better?
see if I think it's going to be better. Yeah. We've got that with a guest from up in Lincoln County where it just makes a difference.
It's especially weird because
How long do we have? 'Cause I could try to maybe, you know, I may have connected with, you know, there's the
Oh,
fast
you can.
internets.
Oh, absolutely. If you want to try to reconnect, because you and I won't be back on for another 4 minutes or so.
Let me
So
let,
what?
I'll let me go away and then I'll come
Okay.
back.
Sounds good. All right. Talk to you in a bit.
Tell by my attitude that I most definitely from.
All right. As I mentioned, we are going to be talking about a New York state of mind since the Brewers are in New York to play the Mets. I'll get an update on the score in just a second here. But first, we're going to have our weatherology forecast through the haze and through what's already quickly warming up temperatures, at least in western Wisconsin here. And Jennifer Wachitsky from Weatherology is going to tell us about the forecast all across the state of Wisconsin. Jennifer, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, well, it does still look like we've got that air quality alert in effect for the entire state again today. The Canadian wildfire smoke lingers with the heaviest smoke in the eastern half of the state today. The air quality is ranging from unhealthy to very unhealthy and poses particular issues for people with respiratory issues, heart disease, children, and older adults. So prolonged outdoor activity isn't advised today. Apart from that, though, it looks like chances for showers and storms across the board today into tonight with a marginal to slight risk for severe weather. That slight risk will range from Wausau down to Richland Center over to Amory and Baldwin. The main threats look to be large hail and damaging winds for the whole state, but cannot rule out a tornado chance within that slight risk here for today and tonight. So definitely something we'll keep you posted on throughout the day. Highs today in the mid 70s to low 80s, a few warmer temperatures in southwestern Wisconsin. Thursday warmer overall tomorrow with a few areas getting to right around 90 degrees, Waukesha up to Richland Center and to the southwest. Otherwise in the 80s for the rest tomorrow. Still a slight chance for showers and thunderstorms with a marginal risk for severe weather from Oshkosh down to Madison and over to the lakefront. Then on Friday, a chance for showers and storms mainly in the afternoon for most temperatures pretty similar to tomorrow. Then 80s expected for the weekend in the 70s closer to Lake Michigan with a slight chance for showers and storms for most, less of a chance around Amory with sunny skies expected around there.
Again, wherever you are today, if you can stay inside with the air conditioner, all the better. Jennifer, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
No problem. Thanks.
All right. And you can definitely see the warm up happening already this morning. It is already 70 degrees in La Crosse. It is 69 degrees up here on Lake Wissota, while over in Oshkosh, it's 61. Green Bay coming in at 61 for folks listening on the Talk of Green Bay as well. The Brewers, as I mentioned, are in New York. They've now split the first 2 games of that 4-game series, losing to the Mets yesterday 7-2. Milwaukee starting pitcher Julio Teheran retired the first 9 batters, but then from the 4th, 5th, and 6th innings, he ended up giving up 7 runs, as many runs as he'd allowed in his previous 6 starts with the Brewers. 2 more games to go against the Mets, 6 o'clock tonight and tomorrow night, before heading to Pittsburgh to the weekend. And a reminder, Up North News puts out a daily newsletter Monday through Friday, comes out around 5 a.m. You can subscribe to it by going to our website, upnorthnewswi.com, and clicking on newsletter up in the top banner. We'd love to have you be a subscriber there. All right, Doug Mell joins us once again, former communications director for UW Stout, former editor for the Eau Claire Leader Telegram, and his guest column in the Cap Times says that the Republican vendetta, especially from Republican Speaker Robin Vos, is based on a false premise, that it's not about indoctrination from the top. It's that students and staff and educators want their campuses to be more inclusive and diverse. And I guess, Doug, to pick up the conversation, I don't want to accuse Robin Vos of saying something in bad faith. Oh, wait, no, yes, I do. He knows this already. He knows that this is what, when students go to, again, now, not every student on campus, they're not monolithic. Of course, there are people who are, shall we say, not all on board with racial justice, but by and large, you have a community that wants to have a full telling of history, to learn from the past, so that we can learn more about planning for the present and future.
Yeah, I agree. And if you think about it, and this actually just occurred to me sort of after I wrote the column, the Republicans keep talking about we need to work on the workforce of our state, right? We need to make sure we don't have a lot of people in the state. We don't have enough people in the state to supply the jobs that we need, right? Why wouldn't you want DEI efforts aimed at ensuring that every person who is capable of obtaining a college education and going into the workforce in the higher and sort of in the higher levels of occupations that need higher levels of education? Why wouldn't you want that? Why wouldn't you want to make sure that basically no student who wants a college education is left behind? Frankly, there are students in this state that need help. We have TRIO programs. We have a lot of programs aimed at students who aren't quite ready for college, okay? And a lot of those programs, Pat, fall within DEI. You know, the federal TRIO programs and outward bound programs and those kind of programs. Why wouldn't you want to make sure that every student who really wants a college education and can do the work but needs some help, gets there? I really don't understand this. And
Well,
it certainly isn't worth cutting the UW system budget over.
no, especially at a time, and some folks might have heard this. I'm going to say it again. There's a $7 billion surplus, and yet the Republicans are about to approve a budget that cuts University of Wisconsin by some $32 million, because that's what they think is how much is spent on DEI programs, which, again, to reaffirm your point, is not just about race.
No.
That it involves other groups that are either vulnerable, marginalized, unrepresented, and those are, some of your own neighbors, no matter where you live in Wisconsin.
No question about it.
That are going to lose out on something like this. Doug, being retired now, and you get to speak your mind much more freely.
Yes.
I could not have asked you this question when you were at UW Stout. I know what kind of an answer I would have received. But basically, if this budget goes through as is with a cut to the UW system, should Governor Evers veto it and make them start over?
There's no question he needs to veto it. And I'll tell you why, Pat. And I've told people this really kind of got to me. In June, when they raised the pride flag over the U.S. Capitol, Tony Evers presided over that. This is the second year they raised the pride flag. He cried, Pat. He cried talking about the hardships that a lot of LGBTQ plus people in this state go through. He sobbed on the dais right outside the East Wing. I don't know if you saw that, but it was very emotional. I found it very emotional. There is no way then that he can turn around and sign a budget that cuts the programs for the very people that he cried about in June when he raised the pride flag. There is no way that he could do it. Plus some of the other things in a budget, the tax cuts for the rich, the fact that there's not an engineering school construction project in the budget for UW-Madison, just a bunch of other things. But he has to veto that budget. There's absolutely no question in my mind.
Now, here's the downside of that, if you will, and I know you're aware of it, but for other folks who aren't, there isn't going to be a government shutdown at the state level if the governor vetoes this budget. It doesn't force something like that.
Right.
What happens is this current budget, the one about to expire, this one just kind of goes into overtime with the same level of state spending. So
Right.
there's really no pressure on Republicans to pass a new budget. So if they veto it, none of the whatever increases are in the budget bill right now, none of them go through, and everything just continues as it is. So that's the risk that the governor would take in vetoing this, is that Republicans say, fine, nothing gets an increase, nothing gets a cut, we just stay as is. And does that cause as much harm as signing a budget with a UW cut?
Well, no, because if you're just talking specifically for the UW system, actually the present budget then is better than the budget for 23-25, right? Because the budget of 23-25 has a $32 million cut. This one at least keeps them where they're at, right? And
right, but other things that this budget would affect,
I know.
yeah.
And
it risks making the UW then looks like a scapegoat. It's almost like a game Republicans are playing, is that they'll say to all these other folks, well, it's the UW's fault. Make them get rid of DEI.
Right. There's no question about it.
It's a game. It's all the game to them.
Yeah. And you're right that I've been told that Tony doesn't really want to veto the budget, but I think it's incumbent on him. I think, and I haven't checked this, I think one of the big factors always in whether or not to veto budget is what happens to school aids. Do the schools get their money, the increased money in September, and shared revenue? I think they took care of shared revenue because they enacted shared revenue increases outside the budget. They did that through separate legislation that the Republicans and the governor negotiated. So I think they've taken care of shared revenue. School aids is another thing. And there are a lot of good things in this budget. But I think because of the tax cuts, and basically a $3 billion giveaway to the rich, and the and the cut to the UW system, he's going to have to veto this. And if you think about it, I'm sure you're aware of this, but this is the budget he can veto because this isn't a re-election budget. 25-27 is a re-election budget for Tony Evers if he decides to run for re-election again. Okay, 23-25 isn't. That'll be forgotten.
Yeah.
So yeah, I, as a former political reporter for the State Journal, I covered a lot of budget debates that went into August, September, October. So it's not unusual for the budget to not get passed and signed by July 1st.
And you could actually make the argument that yes, by going into overtime on this, it's actually gives more time for the public to put pressure on their local Republican legislators and say, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
$7 billion surplus and you're cutting the UW? I think they're really counting on this backlash. And I've been hearing this for, since I was in the legislature in the 2007 budget. That took until November. But you always heard this attitude of, well, college isn't for everybody. No, it's not for everybody, but the college that's there for people should be a good system, should be one that produces the best and brightest, attracts them, retains our best and brightest young people. And the message this legislature is sending is to folks who do want to get educated at a college or university is, you don't matter. You can go ahead and leave and go create a job and put down stakes somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know why, given the tremendous engine for economic development that the UW system is, I really have always been amazed at how hard we had to work to convince Republicans to invest in the UW system. And I spent 15 years. Part of my job was working with legislators. I was a legislative liaison, and good we had a good relationship with our local legislators. But when it came time to vote in the budget, a lot of them, they just get in line, Pat, and they want to do the right. A lot of these mid to backbench legislators want to do the right thing. They really do. But when the leadership has other agendas, which is for Robin Vos fighting off a primary opponent in the next election, because he darn near got took down the last time by a primary opponent, right?
Yep.
And B, satisfying the more right-wing members of his caucus, which is another reason that he's doing this. He wants to show power in the caucus.
In other words, it is all just a game to him, Doug. I'm running up against a commercial break here, but hey, come back so we can talk more about this, especially since the budget might be in overtime by then. Again, Doug Mell's column is in the Cap Times. Thank you, Doug. Good to talk to you.
Nice talking to you, Pat.
All right, have a great day. And
You
when
too.
we come back, we'll talk a bit more about the state budget and also about a Supreme Court decision, a big one about the big lie. We'll be back. You're Up North. All right. And we're in break. Thank you, Doug.
Thanks a lot, Pat.
Oh, this was awesome. I'll talk to you later.
All right. See you,
All right,
Patrick.
see you.
Follow Up North News with our daily newsletter. Go to our website, upnorthnewswi.com, and click newsletter on the top banner. Once again, here's Pat Kreitlow.
As we were talking to Doug Mell a bit ago about the state budget and whether when Republicans pass it out of the Senate and Assembly this week, Governor Evers should veto it. I hope that folks will, we've talked about so many different elements that are part of a state budget bill, the things that are not going to be a part of it, like childcare counts. I mean, this budget bill is literally going to kill off a program that was keeping childcare affordable in Wisconsin. Now, granted, it was with federal money, but with a $7 billion surplus, there is enough state money to continue that going and address the worker shortage. The legislature, the Republicans in it, will not put that back in. They will not put back in, the governor's proposal to expand Badger Care to more working families. They will not put back in the money they're cutting from the University of Wisconsin system. They will not put back in the money that they cut out entirely from improving the UW's College of Engineering, which would do so much to create a new generation of jobs, good paying jobs in Wisconsin, and a host of other things that won't be in it. But I hope a lot of the attention this week is also on what is in the budget bill. Keep this in mind. Governor Evers proposed tax cuts, and it was a very simple tax cut. If you were an individual making $100,000 or less, if you were a couple making less than $150,000, you got a 10% tax cut. It's very simple, right? I mean, for all the talk about, flat tax and everything, make it simple. That's simple. 10% tax cut at those levels. Be up above those levels, not a tax cut, not a tax hike. Here's what's in the bill instead. What Republicans put in the other day. And recall that I referred to it as a heist. This is quite literally stealing from your surplus to give it to the very wealthy. State Representative Francesca Hong helped share a memo from the Legislative Fiscal Bureau that breaks down the Republicans' version of the tax cut. So I'm going to throw some numbers at you, but please try to follow along here. And just remember to compare it to just a basic, good old-fashioned 10% tax cut at $150,000 or below if you're a couple, $100,000 if you are an individual. If your adjusted gross income under the Republican bill is $90,000 to $100,000, you're going to see a tax decrease of $515 or a 14% tax cut. That's pretty decent. But if you're in the $40,000 to $50,000 bracket, you're only going to see a 7% tax cut. If you're in the $20,000 to $25,000 range, you're only going to get a 3.8% tax cut. Meanwhile, under this bill, if you are making $1 million a year, $1 million, that's your income, you'll get a 16.4% tax cut. And if you are making it cuts off at about $15 million. If you're making $15 million or more, and that, by the way, is, let me do some quick math here, roughly 300 taxpayers. Those 300 taxpayers are going to get a 17% tax cut. In fact, if your income is $75 million a year or more, and you'll say, there's nobody like that. Yeah, there are. According to this memo, there are 11 people in Wisconsin who file their taxes and report adjusted gross income of $75 million or more. They're getting that nearly 18% tax cut. Their taxes, each one of those 11 people are going to have their taxes cut $1.8 million. They don't do anything differently, and they still make 75 million plus, but that's 1.8 million that won't go into childcare, that won't go into a middle-class tax cut, that won't go into broadband expansion. which Republicans in the legislature cut to $0, so that these 11 people can each get $1.8 million less of a tax bill. Well, meanwhile, back at those other brackets, if you're making $20,000 to $25,000, your tax cut is $11. $11. If you make $50,000 to $60,000 a year, your tax cut is $165. If you make $200,000 a year, it's still $1,700 is a pretty good tax cut, but it's nothing like, 1.8 million. Let me be a bit more realistic. Just for people who have an adjusted gross income of $500,000, $500,000 a year, there are nearly 18,000 people in Wisconsin who make at least $500,000 a year. They'll see a 16% tax cut, and that's a savings of $6,000. That's, by the way, that adds up to what is it? Is that right? That's right. $109 million cumulative that will not go into helping our schools, helping our infrastructure, helping create jobs in the state. There's more than enough money for a tax cut for the middle class, 10% across the board for people making $100,000 or $150,000 or less. Republicans didn't have to go with that. They could have said, 10% for everybody. But instead, when you average all of this out, it averages out to a 15% tax cut. And that's what they're going to say. They're going to say, Governor Evers wanted to cut taxes 10%. We cut taxes 15%. No, you didn't. You cut it almost 18% for people making $75 million and 3.5% for people making $25,000 a year. That's the legacy of this budget. And it is what leads people to say, maybe we are better off if we just keep this budget in place, veto it, and see if there can be enough pressure brought on other Republican members of the legislature to say, okay, let's write a new budget bill. Let's make it 10% for everybody or whatever. Let's put back the funding for the UW system. Let's put money into child care counts. Let's put the money into the College of Engineering, because that's what our constituents want. And I promise you this week, a whole lot of advocates for child care and public education are trying to pressure Republican legislators into amending the state budget bill this week. It probably won't happen, but I promise you, if the governor vetoes this bill and this goes into overtime throughout the summer of having the Republicans start over with a bill, the public pressure, they may think attention's going to come off them. No, it's going to be exactly the opposite. Because if we get to start fresh, everybody's going to come back in to Republican legislators' offices and on the phones and by email and in listening sessions and town halls and say, get it done right. You don't need to cut the taxes of somebody making $75 million by 1.8 million. Rethink this. Come up with something closer to what middle-class families, the hardest working families in Wisconsin, actually want. In other news, the U.S. Supreme Court actually helped democracy dodge a bullet on a 6-3 vote yesterday. But when you hear about what this vote was, you're going to be angry that there were still somehow 3 conservatives who voted for this loony conspiracy theory that got voted down by the U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court was asked to decide a case that made the claim that state legislatures had total authority over election laws in their state, and that courts could not second guess them. Courts could not review what the legislatures were doing. It's a very fringe legal theory known as the Independent State Legislature Theory, ISL, Independent State Legislature Theory. It's a very extreme reading of some language in the Constitution that does say that the legislature is the one who sets the the parameters of the election. It starts with the legislature, that they set up the date or the time or the system or what have you. But if you read it to its extreme, you can take that language to mean, oh, the legislature is the only group that has any authority over elections. And what this means is, let's go back to 2020. If Mike Pence had actually gone along with Donald Trump's plot to overthrow the election, if he said, we're throwing this back to the state legislatures because there's doubt, the Republican-led Wisconsin legislature could have, and I promise you would have, taken a vote that said, oh, there were so many irregularities, we've determined that Donald Trump actually won Wisconsin's electoral votes. And that's what would have been transmitted to Congress. And if this U.S. Supreme Court had said, yes, under independent state legislature theory, that's exactly what they can do, can you imagine the chaos it would have brought then, or that it would bring to the 2024 presidential election? And so thankfully, it was voted down 6-3. And keep in mind, there are 6 conservatives on that court. The 6 conservatives split 3-3. And the 3 that dissented from this ruling, the 3 that would give state legislatures the power to overrule the will of the voters in their state, were the usual suspects: Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch. That there is a U.S. Supreme Court that exists now with those 3 that were willing to do that is alarming. Equally alarming as when the Wisconsin Supreme Court came within 1 vote of accepting a case that could have led to the state Supreme Court overturning the will of the voters. But conservative Brian Hagedorn, who's proven to be a swing justice on legal matters, said from a legal standpoint, I'm a conservative, but from a legal standpoint, this makes no sense. And thankfully, Wisconsin did not plunge the nation into chaos in 2020. But ISL here would have done exactly that. And we should be very thankful that the U.S. Supreme Court, that at least 3 of the 6 conservatives, came to their senses on this. One more story to share from you, and I don't quite know how to approach this because I don't watch or listen to this Pat McAfee show. I just know that he has Aaron Rodgers on all the time, and it seemed like with every increasing appearance, Aaron Rodgers got a little bit more detached from whatever he once was. Congressman Mike Gallagher from Green Bay was on the show yesterday, I think. And he brought along a Spotted Cow beer, which is great. But he then was wearing a shirt that portrayed wrestler John Cena as Mao Zedong. And he talked about UFOs and China and Elon Musk. But as they went on talking about the UFOs and things that Elon Musk could do with his satellites in terms of China, it just makes me wonder this simple thing. Is the Pat McAfee show a plant? Is it something that was created by folks in Illinois to make Wisconsinites look a little goofy and a little bit more detached from reality when they come on here? I mean, Aaron Rodgers used to be far more respected. Mike Gallagher used to be far more respected. And then they come on to this show and this McAfee gets them talking about goofy stuff like UFOs and hallucinogenic drugs and what have you. And I just want that advice to any other leading Wisconsinites, that if Pat McAfee invites you on, rethink it. It might just be Illinois trying to make us look goofier, and we don't need that right now in the national lens. All right, we'll take a break, see if Todd Alba would like to join us and talk about what's coming up on this afternoon's Todd Alba Show. And again, you can catch all of what we do at Up North News on social media. Just search for Up North News WI. We'll be back in just a bit. You're Up North. Hey, how are you?
I'm all right. It's the mic sound goofy, or I mean, I'm goofy, but
It
I'm
it sound it sounds not as deep, a little kind of
all
not
right.
tinny either, but it's in that
Well,
kind of.
it's on the mixed cast. It says it's on the right microphone, so I don't know. Is it
Oh no, it sounds.
broadcast quality? Okay.
Oh, it sounds like the right microphone. Yeah, it's.
Oh, just
Yep.
the wrong person.
No, 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 no.
Oh lordy.
Yeah. So you made your move.
Yes, I'm still unpacking. My
Mhm.
sister and brother-in-law came down from Eau Claire. Were very nice to help me yesterday, and I feel like today I can knock out all the small stuff and clean up the old place and finally be done. Oh my goodness.
Awesome.
Yes. And poor Aaron is just starting.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
I would have already had a lot of stuff moved over if I had the keys, which I was supposed to on Monday, but
Oops.
Ugh.
they were like, "Oh no, we hope to get them to you by Wednesday or Thursday." And I was like, I hope so too, so I'm not homeless on Thursday."
Yeah,
Right.
we had a new reporter start this week for us, and we used to be set up where before your first day you received your company laptop, but I've
Uh-huh.
noticed more recently they don't like send it till after your first day. It's like, well, you can't
Okay.
do anything then,
Right.
Right.
Oh well. Um, so I'm going to hit a few more of these headlines just one more time,
Yeah.
so I can get your take on them, and then
Sure.
whatever. But I'll probably start with Russia first, just because you've got Trigby. So
Yeah, yeah, sure.
all right, all right. Let's- 10 seconds.
Thank you.
Well, we're moving on now. To the east side. To a deluxe apartment in the sky.
And of course, it would be Todd Alba who got to pack the moving van and move on up to it. It clearly looks like a deluxe apartment that you got yourself there, Mr. Alba. How are you?
Well, I went from the third floor to the fourth.
Whoa.
So I'm not sure
Ooh,
how far I'm moving on up, but
living the
yes,
good
one
life.
floor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good for you. And now
Yeah,
you're,
closer to the smoke.
yeah, no kidding. Jeepers. Well, glad that worked out for you,
Thank you.
more or
Appreciate
less.
we're still kind of unpacking stuff here, but little by little we'll get there. So it's that time of year where a lot of folks that live in apartments once in a
Mhm.
while. It's been 4 years since I changed apartments, but now I'll be just literally a mile closer to work. So
They still do that thing in Madison, Aaron and Todd, don't they? Where for student housing, the leases all expire one day, but you can't move in until the next day. So is there still like one night every summer where like all these kids basically live on the streets for a night? Are you
yeah, I mean, Aaron, you might know better than I think it's 13th and 14th of August
Yeah,
where
yeah,
a
something
bunch of
like
kids
that.
are homeless. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Luke said something about that yesterday, actually. So
Okay, so
I
you
It-
haven't had to live through that.
no.
We lived in Madison for a brief time in 2017, and we were on the 10th floor of a building overlooking downtown, and we learned, yeah, it's very real. It's like an all night party, out on the streets. And thankfully that year it didn't rain. But in other years it has, and you've got your furniture and your belongings out
yeah.
there. And it's just I don't know enough details about it other than that it's the goofiest sounding thing ever that you have all these people. I guess they do because there's consistency in how you can get things cleaned and moved out and everything, but it still doesn't strike me as the best process.
No,
So Todd,
usually
I'm
a lot of
glad you're
people
not on the streets.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too, Pat. I mean, the way the rents are going up, it was close, but no, not so far.
Yeah. Hey, you had Trygve Olsen on, I'm sure, and I've seen Trygve from the Lincoln Project posting because he is very much well aware of how politics works in Russia. So I'm sure he's had some interesting thoughts on the near coup that was attempted last weekend.
Yeah, Trygve Olsen, who is our regular guest on Wednesdays, he'll be here later on this afternoon. His wife, and I'm not saying anything he hasn't said on the air, but his wife is originally from Latvia, so he spent time in Eastern Europe over the years there. And then once he left Wisconsin and he worked in national politics, and kind of after he left a lot of the partisan stuff, he worked for one of John McCain's project, an international project to help spread democracy, and ended up helping run pro-democracy campaigns in Belarus, and has the distinction of being banned from Russia by Vladimir Putin himself.
Hey,
So,
I got
right,
that going
yeah.
for you. Yeah.
He told us a great story. The quick version is John McCain, after this happened, McCain called him up one day. And this is all he said. He picked up the phone and he said, "Boy, it's John McCain. You're known by your enemies. It looks like you're doing a good job." Click. That was the entire phone call. So McCain was impressed that Putin himself had banned Trigby. But Trigby, has this unique window into what's happening in Russia. And I think the important thing to remember for folks in Wisconsin, why it's important that we follow this. Well, number one, of course, Russia has nuclear weapons, right? And you want some stability there, obviously. But the thought process, at least for me and others, I think, is, oh, great, get rid of Putin. But there's always somebody worse, right, that you could have.
It is.
And
It's the Russian nesting dolls, man. You don't want to know what's
exactly.
inside that doll.
Exactly.
No.
So this is a situation where, as Trigby put it succinctly, the world has been a dangerous place. It's more dangerous after this weekend.
Yeah, sadly so. As I ask this next question, I think maybe your microphone switch flipped, because I think I'm hearing on your other one. So while you flip that, I'm going to ask a question here about tax cuts. And of course, my question is going to be a statement that you're going to agree with. So,
Right.
that's what I do on this show, if people haven't figured it out. But as I was reading the numbers on this Republican-sponsored tax cut that's in the state budget bill, it occurs to me what they did to it. They Foxconned the tax cut. What Evers had and your mic is way better. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
The Evers tax cut proposal was a lot like the Main Street bounce back grants, where a little bit to everybody, and that goes a long way, as opposed to Foxconn, where you put 3 billion eggs in one basket. And that's what they've done with this tax cut. When somebody at the top can get a tax cut ranging from $400,000 to $1.8 million, while other people get tax cuts ranging from $11 to $88. You have Foxconn the tax cut.
I was listening earlier before I came on. Was that you or Francesca Hong who figured all that out?
That was Francesca Hong got a memo from the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, and that's what we're reading off of here.
I mean, I'm with your permission, I'm going to cite that today in our show and give you guys credit for it, because I think that lays it out as clear as anything. I mean, that's fantastic work by Legislative Fiscal Bureau and Representative Hong, and for you for putting it out there. Yeah, it's appalling, and you're right. I mean, and those 17 people or whatever it is that make all that money, it'd be great to cross tab that with donations to Robin Voss and Devin Lemahue and other Republicans, and Howard Markline, by the way, co-chair of the Joint Finance Committee.
Yeah, and I wonder if you agree or take issue with my point that, and I'm not really big on vetoing budgets, but that if the governor decides that this is the one to do it with, that it actually will end up bringing more pressure on individual Republican legislators to make the second version a little less ridiculous than this one, in terms of putting nothing into childcare accounts, nothing into the College of Engineering, nothing for expanding Badger Care, and yet doing this Foxconn thing with the tax cut.
It's a great point, Pat. And you're, as a former legislator, if the budget isn't passed and signed into law, the current budget just continues on for our listeners. So it's not like the federal government where everything shuts down, but a lot of projects like the new football practice facility for Coach Fick down there in Madison, that's not going to get built if this budget isn't passed. But more importantly, all these other things for families and childcare and what have you. I don't have time to go into it. Well, a Star Trek term, a Kobayashi Maru, a no-win scenario. And I feel like the governor's kind of put himself into a Kobayashi Maru, because if he doesn't sign it, all these things you cited today that we need, that are good, aren't going to get done. Republicans could cut it further in October. But if you do sign it, I mean, don't you? I mean, as a Democrat, Pat, I mean, don't you kind of weaken yourself if you just acquiesce to all these major cuts that you said you weren't going to sign?
Well, you can. I guess now I'll take the other position here for the sake of argument, and that is to say, actually, you take this and you make them run on it. You run with it, and you say, "Look, here was my proposal. here's what Republicans actually did. Now, I signed it, for the sake of not causing, chaos, but you definitely have a compare and contrast going on there that I'm sure you're going to talk more about on the show today from 1 until 3, all across the Civic Media Radio Network. Mr. Alba, good to see you in the new digs.
Always good to see you.
Thanks for visiting. I'll talk to you this afternoon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Pat.
All right. Thank you. And hey, everybody, thanks for being a part of this today. If you are one of the people of the pod, thank you so much. We appreciate every download, every comment, every time you share this with somebody. But if you are listening live, you keep that radio right here on the Civic Media Radio Network. And tomorrow we will have Hometown Health with Dr. Kristen Lyerly. Have a great Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow.